23 AMC 8, question 25. Another question 25 for a AMC. 15 integers a1, a2, to a15 are arranged in order on a number line. The integers are equally spaced and have the property that a1 is between 1 and 10 inclusive, a2 is between 13 and 20 inclusive, and a15 is between 241 and 250 inclusive. Then what is the sum of the digits of a14? So question 25 is generally the hardest question of the set. So let's dive into it. Firstly, they are looking for the sum of the digits for A14, which is technically saying they are looking for what is A14. But they don't want any of the A, B, C, D, E to give a hint on what A14 actually is because you can test it out. So they try to hide it to say, what's the sum of the digits for A14? To find A14, it's basically saying you need to figure out what the sequence is. And then there is a sentence I want to get your attention, which is the integers are equally spaced, which means those integers have the same distance to each other. So this is a arithmetic sequence. Which means if you have a1 as a first term and d as a common difference, which is the difference between each two consecutive terms, and this number has to be a constant for arithmetic sequence. Then a2 will be a1 plus d, and a3 is going to be a1 plus 2d, and continue on, a15 is going to be a1 plus 14d. What does that mean? This is telling me a1 is less, between 1 and 10. A1 plus d is between 20 and 13. And a1 plus 14d is between 250 and 241. And remember, all of them are integers, so d has to be an integer as well. There are sort of three equations already for a1 and d, and they're integers, so this makes it promising that we might be able to figure out what are those values. Let's use the first equation and the second equation as the example. And this is where it gets really interesting because those are not really equations, they're inequalities. And when you combine those inequalities, you need to be careful. Let me show you why. So if you look at 2 and 1, a1 is between 1 and 10, a1 plus d is between 13 and 20. Do you get something about what is d's range? So from 1 and 2, what would be the range of d? Like d is bigger than something, less than something? This is where you're trying to minus two inequalities. Because a1 plus d minus a1 is going to be d. And this is where you need to be very careful. When you do the minors, you need to take 20 to minus 1. Why? Because the largest possible value of a1 plus d is 20, and the smallest value for a1 is 1. So the maximum possible value of d from this relationship is going to be 20 minus 1, which is 19. And that's where you need to be careful. You can't use 20 to minus 10 because 20 is the maximum value of a1 plus d. 10 is the maximum value for a1. When you minus them, it doesn't really tell you anything. 10 is nothing. Similarly, what's the minimum possible value of d? Just from 1 and 2, well, that's going to be 13 minus 10. So 3, which is 13 minus 10. Same reason. The biggest value of a1 is 10. And the minimum value of A1 plus a number is 13. So the lowest value for D is 3. Otherwise, it's not possible. Okay, great. So this is making some good progress. D is between 3 and 19. A little bit wide for it to be useful. So maybe we can try how does 3 and 1 look like? Because it's the same idea. So 1 and 3. Same thing. You'll be able to get 14D. Less or equal than, again, use the largest here and the minimum here. 250 minus 1, which is 249. And then the lowest value is going to be 241 minus 10, which is 231. This doesn't look very promising yet, but if you remember, D is a integer. So if you try to make a division by 14 both sides, you will get D is less or equal than 249 divided by 14 greater than 231 divided by 14. Well, now you need to take out your draft paper, do a quick calculation, you'll find 249 divided by 14 is less than 18. No, you're fine. 249 divided by 14 is something like 17 point something. And same thing, 231 divided by 14 is 16 point something. And that means, well, if I need to be bigger or equal than 16 point something, so I need an integer which is definitely less than 18, but definitely bigger than 16, right? Because it's bigger than 16 at least. Then the only integer that works is going to be D equal to 17. Now problem is almost solved, right? You know the common difference is now 17. Again, one more time, how do we get it? Is by doing this minus of inequalities. And what you need to be careful about is when you do the minus, you need to use the maximum to minus minimum. Minimum minus the maximum. Okay, so that you get a very accurate range. Well, now if D is 17, now we hadn't really used too much equation too much yet. So let's see. I know A1 plus 17 is between 20 and 13 just by using equation 2 now. And this is telling me A1 is less or equal than 3, greater or equal than minus 7. But in the meantime, I know A1 is greater or equal than 1, less or equal than 10. I'm really shrinking A1's range a lot, right? Because now I know A1 is between minus 7 and 3, and it has to be between 1 and 10. And those two together, I will need to have A1 greater or equal than 1, less or equal than 3. Almost there. Now let's take a look at, equation 3. What is it telling me, right? 14 times the D, 17, is 238. So, if I go to 3 again, I have A1 plus 238 less or equal than 250, greater or equal than 241. This is telling me, it's a little bit crowded, but I'm almost there, so I'm not going to open space. So this is telling me A1 is greater or equal than 3, less or equal than 12. All right. One of them is telling you A1 is between 1 and 3 inclusive. The other is telling you A1 is between 3 and 12 inclusive. So combine those two together, you are sure A1 is just 3. And D is 17, so what would be A14? A14 is going to be 3 plus 13 times 17. And 13 times 17 is 221, so you will be able to get this is 224. And the sum of the digits is going to be 8. So answer is 8. So question 25, so of course it's going to be a very hard question. But what's really useful here is when you have inequalities and you try to minus them, be very careful. How do you do the minus properly? And then it's sort of a little bit lucky that, the number happens to be playing out. Well, this question is designed in this way. So going back to the same idea, explore this first, see what insights you can get, and then that will lead you to the solution.